So let's talk a little bit about the Hotep, man. I think I have a good feeling about what it is. And I do remember coming across Hotep, you as Vibe High back in the day, and Uncle Hotep back in the day. I remember following you guys and thinking, "Holy crap, this is the crossover that I've been looking for." So many similar values it felt like to me at the time, and I
Yeah,
can still see it today. And then like politically, we're kind of aligned as well, and I think it might speak to this independently motivated, self-built sort of attitude. But
yeah,
what does Hotep mean to you? So that my guys who may not be familiar with you guys and your work and your vibe and this crew that you've built, right? You said you wanted
yeah,
to build a crew. You always wanted to have a
yeah.
gang's not the right word, but you know what I mean? A brotherhood, a collection of guys doing stuff productive, fight club, record labels. I mean, I did all the same things, by the way. I had a record label. I was a DJ. I was a professional full-time DJ for about 4 years. Traveled
Okay,
all around the country playing clubs all night long, lasers shooting out top of my head. So I still got right literally right behind me are my 1200s still in the coffin, and I got like about
nice,
1200 records over here down from like 10,000. Love
nice.
it. I love it. So tell me though, like what's the Hotep vibe so that my peoples can get a good feel for that.
First of all, let me just give everyone a reference. Hotepnation.com. Hit the FAQ button, or you can just type in your search engine, Hotep FAQ, and a lot of the questions will be answered there. But Hotep literally translates to peace or satisfaction, or to
Mm.
be at rest. Could even mean tomb. There's several definitions. You'll see them on the website, and that's ancient Medu Neter is the language, ancient Egyptian basically, and so that's what the word Hotep means. Um, Black liberals turn it into a pejorative. Um,
Who turned it into pejorative?
Black liberals,
Oh, I see. What's that
yeah,
about? How could being at peace be a pejorative?
exactly, exactly. Like that's the conundrum, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, we're at diametrically opposed ends as far as ideology is concerned. Our ideologies are diametrically opposed, so um, they're very offensive, and in the conscious community, going back, late 60s, 70s, 80s, we were greeting each other in the community. Hotep, we were saying Hotep, like you say, good night, good morning. We say Hotep. So because they knew that was part of our language, they called us Hoteps and used it as a label to lambast us and basically try to ridicule our conjecture, I guess you can say. I don't know. Um,
Well, what is? I mean, I think a lot of us are familiar with what the liberal ideology is, but like, what's the Hotep ideology? What makes you guys an object of ridicule for them? Because we do know that ridicule is one of their tools, right?
yeah,
The liberals, the radical left, the progressives, rules for radicals. It's like rule number 11. It's like ridicule your opponents, ridicule.
yeah.
Why? I mean, obviously they see you as some sort of threat. Otherwise, they would just ignore you. What is it about your ideology? What is it, first of all, and then what is that interplay between him and you and the liberals, the black liberals?
Well, they'll say it's rooted in white supremacy, capitalism, so on and so forth. Because we talk a lot about economics,
Mm.
and they feel that capitalism is some white supremacy created system, whatever, whatever. Um, and they're all basically controlled by Marxists and socialists. So of course they're going to be anti-capitalist. But when Trayvon Martin was murdered and so on and so forth, um, they didn't like our solutions. I was saying things like, invest in yourself, buy black. The things that Black Lives Matter is talking about now, outside of some of their rhetoric. But I was saying a lot of these problems can be solved if we controlled our communities. And if you didn't have white cops, you wouldn't. If the 99% of the police force was black, you wouldn't have these problems. When we look at how the Irish stopped being, um, are looked at as like white N words,
Hmm.
and Italians the same way. Well, what they do, they took over fire departments, they took over police departments, right? These essential jobs. Um, so, I mean, if black people are concerned about police brutality, then maybe we just take some of the kids who may be headed in the wrong direction at a very early age and just head them down to the police academy, straight out of high school or whatever, and get them trained up that way. Um, but, it is what it is.
Interesting. So you think that they they see you guys as a threat because you push in self-reliance and self-sustenance and independence and building your own thing and building your own community and what and taking responsibility for your own lives, right? Like being focused on yourself. Like
Yeah.
you own it. It's you. Who else is
Yeah.
going to be responsible?
Yeah. Yeah. They they're poverty pimps,
Mm.
race pimps. So they get to play the victim card, and the victim card is very profitable. And our type of rhetoric will put them on the unemployment line. So it's very important for them to ridicule us, because we're like, all right, racism is going to exist. It's like the debate um, that Walter E. Williams had in the state versus blacks, or the state against blacks. And he's up there arguing with a black congressman and another black liberal. And you could just tell by the way they were acting, it's just like very immature and not really caring for the black community. It's all about, oh, government has to do for us, government has to do for us. And Walter E. Williams is saying that even some of the solutions that the government provides that are exact causes of um, unemployment and poverty, so that's another person, I would study, but you'd be hard pressed to find um, Ebony or Essence or the Griot or any of these other, or Root, to even write an article for Walter E. Williams. It's Black History Month. How many of these people would actually exalt somebody like Walter E. Williams or Thomas Sowell or Dr. Francis Cress Welsing? Like a lot of people haven't studied the scholars that Hoteps have studied. We have our own set of scholars as opposed to some of their scholars, which would be like Du Bois and Baldwin and I guess King and Barbara Jordan, some of these other type scholars. Whereas we look to, not to say that there's anything wrong with those people, but I think the difference between Hoteps is we'll study those scholars and we'll study our scholars. What they'll do is they'll study their scholars and then they'll lambast our scholars. But we look at the whole spectrum and then draw better conclusions. But it's all about empowerment.
Empowerment. And I think that's part of the reason why there was like crossover appeal between Hotep and Red Pill, where I was hanging out mostly back when I first saw you guys. Because that was really all about, it's just about taking control of your life, wrestling your life away from the narrative, not being a victim to feminist ideology, to like diminished masculinity, or not just like succumbing to this notion that we can't have all male spaces, or the fact that just toxic masculinity, the whole thing. I mean, the idea here is sort of to break out of the matrix, is to just to get off of those rides and to create your own ride and to take responsibility for that. And not only to create your own ride, but to create your own team, your own squad, your own community, maybe your whole nation, right? Hotep nation.
Right.
And that's the mark of leadership, I think, man. I think that's the mark of leadership, and I think that's also one reason why they don't like you so much, because you must be dangerous if you're leading people down a path of self-sustenance and independence and independent thinking, breaking away from the matrix, breaking out of the system, releasing the narrative shackles that are upon us. I mean, that the power of narrative, man, it's like it's so it's everywhere. It's insidious. It really might be one of the most powerful forces in the universe today. The power of narrative, and we see these narrative battles going on right now with AOC and all this other crap we can talk about. But one of the scariest narrative of all to me is that. And look, here's my background. I worked for 10 years in charter schools. I was executive director of charter schools in Washington, D.C. Title I, 100% under the poverty line, 100% African American. You know, they were distressed turnaround, you know, schools that needed to be fixed. And so I have spent 10 years in the trenches trying to help change education in the city, in the inner city for kids in Washington, D.C. And one of the scariest things that I came across was this notion that somehow the solution to these kids' problems wasn't inside of them, and that the solution to the problem was outside of them, and it was somebody else needed to do something, and something else needed to change, and some policy needed to change, or the curriculum needed to be different, or, you know, the laws were bad, or the cops are bad, or whatever. But it was never about empowering the individual. And I remember getting pushback from the existing staff and just the vibes in the schools when I would try to emphasize something like that. And man, did I encounter all kinds of racial issues in that environment, which I could describe later. But I want to stick to this idea about narratives. It's like, where does the narrative come from that gets into these kids' heads that they can't do it themselves? And they have to rely on somebody else. And if nothing good happens, it's not their fault.
You think it's the kids? You think the kids think that way?
Well, I think it's put into the kids' minds. I think so. Yeah.
You've seen them act
they
that
break
out?
it. They get broken. They get broken by around third or fourth grade, I think.
And think that there's some outside entity that is to blame for their problems?
Yes, I think so. I think that the attitude was consistently, if only these other things would change, then I would be all right.
It's not entirely false.
Yeah. Tell me.
We got this thing called the Federal Reserve. You know, we got things called minimum wage. We got things called regulations and licensing. They're not entirely wrong. They might not have the right attitude, but technically they're correct. The system is rigged against them. I mean, all Americans, but especially the poor.
Yeah.
You know, it's very hard to create upward mobility in America as somebody who's poor without having close proximity with somebody that can, one, help change your mindset.
Yeah.
And two, show you how to manipulate the system, right? You need somebody that's manipulated the system to show you to manipulate the system. But if you're surrounded by people who have already been manipulated by the system, how do you even come out of that, right? Like if everybody around you, like you said, has that mentality that we can't do systems against us, right? You know, how do you even expect the kids to come out of this situation? When I see a kid come out of the situation, I always think like, wow, it's like freaking amazing. Like, wow, you actually made it out. Like, that's impossible. You did the impossible. Because, you know, when I think about information is about who you have close proximity to. You know, a lot of people say, oh, wait, everybody has access to internet. You can Google anything these days. And it's like, yeah, true. But it always comes back to the statement where you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know what you don't know, you don't even know what to type into the browser, right. You know? And if I type in, you know, how to make money online, I'm not going to find the best resources. I'm going to find the people who have the best SEO game. Right. True. And it might lead me down a path of, you know, you might end up with a drop shipping business and you think, oh, drop shipping is great. But, you know, drop shipping is the type of business that requires 5 to 10K worth of capital before you turn a profit, you know, and a lot of people that'll sell you that type of business won't tell you that, you know, that you need to drop 5 to 10K on ads before you can build a lookalike audience, you know. So there's a lot of dishonesty on the internet as well. So how do they even know where to start with that? You know, it's about who you have close proximity to. So that's why you need more mentors and people to give them access to right information.
Yeah. Examples, leadership, connectivity to the network. It's an interesting thing you bring up is like, what network are you connected to is so important. Yeah. What are your adjacencies? What nodes are you connected to? What long hops do those nodes have? How flat can you make the world? How small can you make it? What networks of information can you tap into? And that's true in the old days. It was a smaller scale, different style. Is even more true today, man, in this interconnected social media world where we're all connected. And that's what we're working on, the liminal order, man. We want to create those adjacencies and connect to important nodes, get that information so that we can become stronger, all of us as a network.